I've been covering Macy's for a long time, and I know you guys just this month unveiled your new social purpose platform that you're calling Mission Everyone. And it has other initiatives that you guys have already had, some leadership diversity initiatives, the 15% pledge. So can you explain what's the new element of the platform?
So Mission Everyone for us was the opportunity to focus our social purpose in a way that the company has a strategy that gets behind it, where we put metrics behind it, where we put accountability behind it. And so I think we've always been pretty good on a number of these subjects, but we really didn't have a galvanizing filter that helped us decide what was important and what we wanted to put energy on. So what really has been new on it is really what we've been able to do. When you think about it, we've pledged about $5 billion that we're going to put to sustainable, and diverse products. So that's one of the first things that we did, and we're going to do that by the year 2024, and we can go into some of the detail of that. And then when you look at Mission Everyone, it's got like 3 pillars to it. The first one is really about people and what we do with our colleagues and what we do with our partners. The second is on communities, and particularly what we do with our communities in where our stores are, but really on a national level, what we do with our grants, what we do with local volunteerism, what we do with new communities and diverse youth that are looking for a foothold in retail. And then the third, which is a newness for us, is really what we're doing with Planet, and what we're doing with our sustainability goals and how we're articulating that because of our colleagues are really pushing us to do that, because our customers are expecting it of us, certainly our shareholder is, and so we can go into any details on that.
Got it. And so since some of these things that you guys have looked at, obviously racial diversity, sustainability, that has been on Macy's mind, what type of progress do you think you guys can now make now that it's under this umbrella that you couldn't previously when they were different initiatives?
Yeah. So what I'd say, let's start with when we talk about kind of Mission Everyone and we look at the people section. So I'll talk about the 2 different camps. One of them is on diverse representation. So we've always had a very good culture. And we've always had, a culture where we've been able to retain some of the best talent, but we had a drop off, particularly with our diverse executives and kind of the middle management rank. And the opportunity to get more symmetry between what's on the front line and the communities that we serve all the way to the boardroom, we had that middle section where we had high dropout. And so taking Mission Everyone and saying, okay, what are our goals and strategies to really make sure that we're bringing equity to those particular executives, we're giving them the support that they need, and we're making sure that they're all part of diverse slates. And when we think about how we're going to be doing our promotions and the interview process and all of that, making sure that they have the tools that they need. So we've done that through a lot of various programs that was part of Mission Everyone. When we look at the 15% pledge, that's on the partner side. So that was the opportunity to say, we kind of started at this early. And 10 years ago, when we looked at these amazing communities that we're serving, but we didn't have a lot of Black and owned businesses or even women-owned businesses. And so when you started to look at that, we saw an opportunity to, what could we do to train them? And so we created a program called The Workshop, which is a business development program. And we have gone through 10 years of this. We've graduated 175 companies, and it just keeps getting better. It's getting more and more relevant. But what we kept finding was that when you're dealing with a company like Macy's or Bloomingdale's, you're talking about companies that have a lot of scale. And this idea that you would be you're a Black-owned designer, you've got products, but how do you operate at scale for something that would be for hundreds of stores or go to a website? So we needed to find new ways to be able to give them opportunities. So part of Mission Everyone is to expand on that. And what you see in kind of the new iteration of the workshop is bringing them mentorship, bringing them funding for granting, giving them through the internet opportunities to be able to have their assortment online for a month period, see if it gets traction. Then we make decisions about putting it into other stores. Offering our graduates exposure to a lot of other brands and a lot of other retailers that might have use for them. So what we do is we might graduate somebody that is not at Macy's, but their business is flourishing because they've got new contacts that we've helped them with. So the 15% pledge has been an interesting one. Because when we took that on, it was this idea that you would have 15% of your net receipts would be with Black-owned businesses. And for us, we started with a very small percentage. And just by calling that out and saying to our colleague population, this matters, this is of consequence. What's the reason we do it? And how do we do it? And since we've done that, we've now, it's 5 times the amount of Black-owned brands that we have. I showed you in the waiting room what we're doing with Icons of Style. It was our opportunity to work with Black designers, and instead of having them produce their goods, we produce it for them. We use our private brands as a platform to scale them into hundreds of stores and into our website. And that plus doing scholarships and doing mentorships and just, we're on our way. We're never going to be done with this. I think we're still in the early innings of making this work, but it matters to our customers. It certainly matters to our colleagues. And I think ultimately it matters to our shareholder.
You've mentioned the 15% pledge a few times, and here at Bloomberg, we closely follow that.
Yeah.
Wrote about Macy's when they signed on in late 2020. And I wanted to also hear a little bit more about that progress. I know you touched on some of the things. So I know Sephora recently came out. They were the first ones to sign the 15% pledge. They said now with those investments, that intentionality, they're at 8%. Where is Macy's currently at when it comes to reaching?
We're still less than 5% when you think about the scale of the businesses that we do. But we are, again, we'll probably have a 5 times growth this year. And the ambition is to continue to grow from that. What you need to do is you need to find a brand that you can scale into a lot of doors. In a lot of cases, what you have is that you might have a brand that starts out with a Black designer and then they sell it to a company that has the opportunity to scale it, or they do scale it differently. So one of the things that we look at is we look at diverse spend in all of its totality. It's not just the owned business, but it also is second tier. We particularly see that as you think about non-retail. So when you think about construction and housekeeping and all the other elements, finance, when you look at legal, there's lots of opportunities for us to work. The firm might be white owned, but there's a lot of subcontract work that they do that could be a Black-owned business. And we really put that into our contracts to try and get those second tiers built up. And we do that across our entire procurement schedule. And all of our teams are basically incented against that. We make that, again, it's a high company enterprise priority, and we measure it. And we're very, very clear on how we execute to that.
So what people should understand about Macy's when you guys are thinking about scaling or to include more Black-owned businesses, it's not just in the merchandise that's being sold.
It's not just in the merchandise. When you look at it, it's about 2/3 of the spend is in non-retail.
Okay. The whole supply chain that you guys are looking at.
So you think about trucking, you go through all the elements of how we bring our goods and services to market. It takes a lot of non-retail supply chain.
Got it. And I wanted to talk more about the workshop at Macy's. So like you said, you guys are very much ahead of this. I believe it launched in 2011, so it's over a decade old. And what it is, it's a retail training and development program.
Right.
To making sure that diverse founders, whether it's racially diverse, women, LGBTQ, veteran-owned, they're getting the right resources to be able to do business with Macy's or in retail in general. So since the summer of 2020, what investments do you guys realize you needed to make into the business to help drive even more progress for those businesses?
Yeah, the first thing is that we had to pull in the entire, it wasn't just going to be a marketing or a merchandising decision. It's how do we give them support in finance? How do we make sure that we give them kind of, what is the path to kind of a bulletproof P&L that is going to make them successful at retail? Putting the entire apparatus behind the success of those individuals and making sure that was all part of the curriculum. We started out, as you know, we did with Babson College. One of the things that we found is that how do these brands, particularly with social media and the emergence of that, about how they market their authentic stories and their wares, of how you use Meta or how you use Google, bringing our relationships there into the room so they can get tutorials and mentorship on that was a big piece. Having online certification, online courses. So the pandemic really pushed us into being able to reach so many more talented companies out there that we
before was it in person?
It was in person.
So the pandemic.
We would do it over like a 2-week window. It's now a longer curriculum. This online training has been big. And then there's just things that have been always issues. We do lots of surveying to understand, okay, what are your pain points? What do we need to help you work through? We also do check-ins with all of our alumni to say, how's it going? What have you learned? What should you have learned from us that you're now learning now the hard way? And really using that to kind of really completely reshape the curriculum each time. And we have the advantage because our founder of this, Sean Outler, who runs diversity and inclusion for Macy's Inc., she founded it. Yeah. And she's the one that basically is shepherds it and all the iterations that make it to what it is today with a lot of ambition to make it better for the future.
Right, and today, throughout the whole conference, we've been talking about solutions. We've been talking about okay, so we have the data, we've talked the talk, what kind of solutions. So for anyone out in the audience who might be thinking about launching an accelerator for the aim of getting more Black-owned businesses or diverse founders, like what specific advice would you share based off of some of the feedback that you guys have received?
Yeah, the biggest feedback we've received is that, how do I start? How do I do this?
Yeah.
And, they generally have great ideas, they've got great products, and they're totally connected with their customer. I would tell you that that's never the issue. We get this, we've 175, we probably interviewed about 1,500 to get to that 175. And it's like, it's a big decision about how do you make the choices to get to just this select group.
Right.
And they always have amazing connections to the DNA of their brand, to the needs of their community. So it's then, how do you bring that to life? And it's just helping them conceptualize that. So in a lot of cases, they're totally sold there. We try and tailor the program to the individual businesses. It's not a cookie cutter approach. So when you look about half of the curriculum can be tailored to the individual company and their need. They may have an opportunity in social media, but they've got their balance sheet totally solved. So we try and make it bespoke to who those individuals are. And we look at, it started out, it was mostly women's apparel. Then it kind of went to beauty, then men's, then jewelry, then kids. We now have home involved with it. So it was it's been a journey for us.
What advice would you give to other retail chiefs who might be thinking about launching an accelerator, knowing that they want to, but it's like, where do I start?
Where do you start? Yeah, so I think it's got to be true to where your customer is and where you're going with that. So where are your products? And I think that sometimes in retail, it can be a sea of a sameness. So outside of your own private brands, you've got a lot of national brands that everybody has and enjoys. But this idea about having what is unique content that works for your customer, and what does that look like? I think the merchandising strategy's got to drive, the solution of having diversity behind it. But I think every, retail chief is looking at this because you've got a consumer that is much more requiring of it than ever. And we've got to serve them, and it matters to them where the products were sourced, what the origin story of the product is, what's the DNA of the designer. It matters to the colleague who's helping you design it. That's going to become increasingly important. Yeah. So I would say that every retail CEO has got to have a strategy, and they got to put it in hyperdrive if they're behind.
So you mentioned people care about the materials or
Yes.
where a product is from, sustainability, that leads perfectly to that. And so as part of the Mission Everyone, Macy's has the goal of making sure that I believe 100% of your private label brands are preferred materials, which includes cotton, synthetics,
Yes.
wood-based
All
materials.
fibers, all materials by 2030.
By 2030, so
Yes.
in 8 years' time,
Yes.
if someone's walking into a Macy's or shopping online for your private label brands, they should expect.
They should expect that.
Got it. And so I guess the question then is, what other expansions do you see Macy's doing when it comes to sustainability? I know you guys have the partnership with ThredUp, online reseller.
Right.
We were talking earlier about how your 21-year-old daughter keeps you on the forefront when it comes to.
She doesn't buy retail.
She doesn't buy retail.
So, she's an audience of one, but and thank goodness that not all of her peer group is that way. But definitely, when you think about a Gen Z consumer, the whole idea about recycling of content is extremely important. So when I look at our sustainability, the one element about what we're doing with fiber, et cetera, but science-based targets and really living by those, really important that we're improving the quality of life for the women and men who live in our or who are working in the factories that we produce all of our private brands in. So we have a big private brand apparatus. It's about 20% of our business. And so consolidating down to those factories that offer the most ethical standards and that basically are really working on really all the human quality, the rhythms of life that they're focused on. We are now working with a Fashion Makes Change, which is a nonprofit that's based here in the States, giving them grants along with other companies to be in those factories and to particularly improve the lives of women and the families that are in these particular factories. So that's something when I look at our private brands, we have an end-to-end view of improving not only the quality of life, but also the sustainability of those products. So that's the other thing that we're working on. And I would say with sustainability, we're in the early innings of this. We have big ambition with it, but we got a long ways to go.
Anything on the horizon in the next year that you guys are thinking about expansion for the circular economy? Yeah,
what we're doing is when you think about, if you go to our website and you look at, we have basically a sustainability site listed on that kind of tells all of what we're doing. New brands coming up. So obviously this is a very, very important element for us. We had launched a new private brand in the spring of 21 called Oak that's sustainable, fully sustainable. And expect more of that in terms of private brands that we create. In terms of the science-based targets of being really particular about exactly where we're going and all the measurables and how we're holding ourselves accountable. So you'll see that in all of our proxies and all that's coming up. So that's what you'll see in the next year.
Got it. As part of Mission Everyone, also you guys are thinking about ethnic diversity at the top level of your company, 30% by 2025. But I also know that you think about diversity more broadly in your C-suite, among your top leaders.
Yeah.
So can you talk to me a little bit more about how you lead as a leader when you think about diversity more broadly and surrounding yourself with people who don't look like you, think like you, all of those things?
Well, look, I think that at the end of the day, you need to have a team of talented colleagues that are serving these communities. And it's like that the idea about just saying that it's going to be a mirror is your ambition. Because I got to tell you, there's so many advantages that come from that pursuit. And this isn't a diversity question. This is really an inclusion and an equity conversation. It's this idea that when they do come, they are their full selves and they're contributing. They're fully comfortable in expressing what they know in what we do for the customers that we're seeking. And this has been a journey for us. We have a couple of things that we do. One is that we take a culture pulse survey that is twice a year, and really looking at we've always had a good culture. We have high engagement. 90% of our entire population take it. This last one that we just took, 50,000 were diverse colleagues, and they give us like a 91% in terms of all of the questions that you would expect would keep them in a company like ours, producing where we want them to. And so what we're always looking for are those colleagues that can take their experiences and make a difference in the business. So, last week, we honored a colleague who was a buyer in our dress department. Her name is Quasia King. And she happened to be from one of the historical black sororities, one of the Divine Nine. And she came from that, and she was in the number 3 biggest sorority in the country. And, she was going to a lot of events. And what she found in these 4 sororities was they all wear the exact color of their sorority. And they're looking for opportunities to find those colors in a retailer. So she basically went to her number 1 dress manufacturer and basically produced it and got that on all the social spaces, got that through her sorority network, is now working with it on suits, and has created a $10 million business that was otherwise not there. That we would not have looked to that had it not been for her leadership. We have countless examples of opportunities to say, hey, when you show up with your experiences, your perspective, this is a company that wants to hear it, and we're going to enable you to be able to create it. And that's an example of really what I think of as inclusion and equity at work.
And how does it show up for you when it comes to leading with your identity as a diverse leader and making sure that everyone does feel like they can bring their full selves to work?
Yeah, those of you who don't know that I'm gay. I came out in my early part of my career in 1980. It was actually 84 when I came out, but I came out in Macy's, California. And Macy's, California at that point, before Macy's consolidated, was 25 stores. And at that particular time, AIDS was starting to rage in San Francisco. It was a scary time for gay people, for not only your own personal health, but how it was perceived by others. And it wasn't an option for me, and I didn't think I would ever have a future, but I needed to be my authentic, and I was who I was. And I don't think I'd be where I am today if it had not been at Macy's that I did that with. And I've been with this company for 38 years because it has always been a welcoming culture. My opportunity as the steward of it is really how to now steer that in productive ways. And so, I feel that when I looked at being a diverse leader, it gave me the sensibility to recognize, hey, how much by being authentic could that just unleash my comfort level in being myself at work and my ideas? And by doing authentic, that breeds trust. And when you have trust, you unlock so much in people's potential. So that's one of the things that we really test for. Meaning we survey for is how do people feel about being at work? And do they feel like they have to check their authentic self at the door, or can they bring their full experience and live their true self in the workplace? And we're making some good inroads on that. I feel like, we've got, now that needs to be channeled into productive ways to drive profitable growth.
Right, right. And as we wrap up, we've touched on a lot of initiatives that you guys have going. Who's accountable? Where does the buck stop?
Well, that's the beauty of, we're in transformation. So when you and I first connected, we were launching the Polaris strategy right before the pandemic in February of 2020. I think one thing we've learned through all that is, okay, execute, execute, execute. And with that, have a really clear strategy, have really clear initiatives, have very strong KPIs, and have the throat on each of the ends of that about who's accountable for it. And so, that is something, when I look at all the tenets of Mission Everyone or all the tenets of Own Your Style or 2 brand platforms we're launching at the same time, they've all got accountable leaders that are emboldened, they've got the decision-making rights, they've got the support that they need, and it's our job as senior leaders to help shepherd that through.
Jeff, well, thank you so much for walking us through and for sharing your story.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.